Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to the crowd, "They will seize and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and the prisons. And they will have you led before kings and governors because of my name. It will lead to your giving testimony. Remember, you are not to prepare your defense beforehand, for I myself shall give you a wisdom in speaking, that all your adversaries will be powerless to resist or refute. You will even be handed over by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair on your head will be destroyed. By your perseverance, you will secure your lives." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Continue reading through the book of Daniel this morning, and there's a famous phrase that comes from this first reading. Oftentimes people will say, "The writing is on the wall," and this is a reference back to the book of Daniel. The phrase meaning that there is a sad end that is coming, and it is unavoidable. The writing is on the wall. And that is what happened here in this story of Daniel. There is a king, Belshazzar, who held a feast and a party for his wives and for his other court officials, and he made the terrible mistake of asking that all of the vessels from the temple in Jerusalem be brought to him. So when the Babylonians went and they burned down the temple, they first emptied out all of the holy vessels. And King Belshazzar here decided to use those vessels as instruments during his feast. It's a very sacrilegious act. And so all of a sudden there was a hand that appeared writing on the walls. And it wrote down 3 words, Mene, Tekel, and Peres, which were Babylonian words for monetary amounts. But in Aramaic, they meant something different. Mene meant that basically their days had been numbered in Babylon. Tekel meant that they had been weighed in the scales and found wanting. And Peres meant that the kingdom would be divided. Right? So this is a kind of a wordplay here. You know, this seems like a kind of a mythical story, as a lot of these stories in the book of Daniel do. One of the things that's interesting about archaeologists is that they've actually found evidence for this King Belshazzar, who is named here. For many centuries, scholars thought that Daniel made all sorts of mistakes, right, in this book, whoever wrote the book of Daniel. Until about 100 years ago, they actually found something called the Nabonidus Cylinder, and it mentions this King Belshazzar of Babylon. Right? And as we always talk about, this continues to happen in biblical archaeology. We begin to find how historically accurate this book of Daniel is. So be wary if you ever try reading a commentary on the book of Daniel. I can guarantee you that in the introduction it's going to say how Daniel was historically inaccurate. And they're going to give a bunch of examples. But those examples are based on the idea that they have yet to confirm many of those historical facts yet. It's the key word. And this continues to happen in the book of Daniel. Now, how this fits into salvation history is that shortly after this feast ended, Babylon was indeed taken over by the kingdom of the Medo-Persians. So if you remember the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had, the first kingdom was the Babylonian kingdom. And then the second kingdom was the Medo-Persian kingdom. And that's what happened right after this story took place. Belshazzar was slain by the Medo-Persians, and the Medo-Persians took over the kingdom. And the story is also instructive for us when you recognize what was the main sin that Belshazzar had committed. It was sacrilege towards the holy vessels of the temple. And I bring this up because I think it is something that has been lost in modern Christianity and modern Catholicism. There used to be a great reverence for the things that were used in the liturgy and in the Mass. Every church, the sanctuary was divided off from the rest of the church by a communion rail. And that was intentional. It was supposed to signify that the sanctuary is something that is set apart. In the olden days, people were very familiar with the fact that nobody should be technically touching the altar because the priest's hands are consecrated. When deacons come to the Mass and they kiss the altar, they're not supposed to touch the altar with their hands. And sometimes you'll go into a church and not only do people lean on the altar, they'll set things on the altar. A lack of reverence. Or when it comes to the Blessed Sacrament, for most of church history, people were not able to receive communion in the hand. And the obvious reason why is out of an exalted reverence for the Blessed Sacrament. You don't want the Blessed Sacrament to fall. You don't want the Blessed Sacrament to spill. Right? That's the reason why the precious blood was not given for many centuries. And I'm not saying that all these things are terrible mistakes. I'm just reminding all of us. Sacrilege is a very serious sin against God. We need to have a great respect for the holy objects that are placed before us and the holy objects that are used in the liturgy, lest we also be guilty of profaning or not sufficiently reverencing these holy things